What do you have at 5? I'll let you go
I have
before
the
I go.
49ers. I have the
Okay.
49ers at number 5. Obviously, we know the biggest departure is Eric Armstead. The biggest addition in free agency is Leonard Floyd. We know the draft picks, Ricky Pearsall, Renardo Green, Malik Mustafa. I think the 49ers, the names changed. I don't know that they got a lot better. Now, they don't have to get a lot better, right? They were this close to winning a Super Bowl. But I also think that last year was arguably the most down that the league has been in many, many, many years. I can't remember a league being more wide open for one particular team than it was for the San Francisco 49ers last year. The NFC was absolute dog water for majority of the year. They struggled with Green Bay and Detroit way more than I thought that they should have in those playoff games. I thought they were the clear better team and should have been. They were the experienced team and the better team. Yet both those games came down to the wire. I don't understand it. And then you had the way better roster than Kansas City, yet you still couldn't figure out a way to get it done. And now you're looking at all these teams, and it's like, well, you stayed roughly the same. The names changed. You stayed roughly the same, and everybody else around you is taking major leaps forward. It's really hard for me to put them any higher than number 5 at this point. So right now I've got the San Francisco 49ers at number 5. Who do you have at number 5?
That's very interesting because my number 5 and my number 4, I'm going to have to give them both together because when I was doing this, it was very, very hard for these two picks. And the only reason why I went with one over the other, and I'll explain that right now. So I went with the Lions at number 5. And I had the 49ers at 4. I think the Lions have gone much, much better, adding Terrion Arnold. They added interior line, Mekhi Wingo, who should be getting a rotational role with their team. But for me, they added a lot of secondary, and that's what their team lacked. So for me, I had them at 5 only because, and I know I'm not sold on Brock Purdy or anything, but because of the quarterback situation. I think Jared Goff is the worst quarterback on a contending team. Like, it just, for me, that's just why I had him at 5 and not 4, because I was close to having the Lions at 4. Ended up putting the Lions at 5, Niners at 4 because of the quarterback situation. But like you said, Niners were close to losing to the Lions. The Niners didn't get better. Truthfully, if you don't get better, you get worse because everyone else around you is getting better. So essentially, the Niners did, in a way, get worse because everyone around them got better. So that's where the Lions could. How much better did you get? Can you finally knock off the Niners? You were up a lot of points, like 17 in the NFC Championship game. So things could change in one offseason. The Niners didn't really add much. It's can everyone stay healthy for another year? Can things go your way? And I don't know. I mean, the Niners at 4 for me and Lions at 5. That's where I'm at right now. And it's because of the quarterback situation. I know a lot of people hearing that are going to be like, what the hell? Marco has them at 4 because of Brock Purdy. And they know I'm not huge on Brock Purdy yet. I want another year of consistent play from him to give him that stamp of approval.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I was back and forth as well. That was my 5-4 team, was Detroit and the 49ers. I put the Lions ahead of the 49ers, though. So the players they lost were Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jonah Jackson, which I talked about how big of an addition Jonah Jackson is to the Rams offensive line. But they replaced Jonah Jackson with Kevin Zeitler, who's a Pro Bowl guard in his own right. So you went from one really good guard to another really good guard. So that's no drop off. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I definitely think losing him can hurt, but he didn't play a majority of last year. He came back and was kind of a shell of himself for the playoffs. He was just a name. In fact, a big majority of those snaps, he wasn't even playing in the playoffs. So you go and get Carlton Davis, you trade for him, you add DJ Reader, which if anybody's unsure who DJ Reader is and what he brings to the game, go watch the Bengals game last year for the 49ers and look at how he messed everything up the middle. That game right there, single-handedly, and what he did to the 49ers interior offensive line, single-handedly makes me want to replace every single one of them. Left guard, center, right guard. That's how much he wrecked the game for the San Francisco 49ers by himself last year. Now he's on Detroit. And then not only did they go get Carlton Davis because they need help in the secondary, they draft Terrion Arnold, they draft Ennis Rakestraw, and then they get Mekhi Wingo late in the draft as well. They absolutely improved their defense. Their offense shouldn't be any worse for the wear. They didn't lose Ben Johnson. If they would have lost Ben Johnson, I would have easily kicked them behind the 49ers. But in a shocker, he stayed. That offense is going to be every bit as good as what it was last year. That defense was a major, major weakness for them. I don't think that defense is a weakness any longer. I think that defense is very formidable, and I expect them to take a big step forward. So I have the Detroit Lions at number 4 ahead of the San Francisco 49ers, who I have at number 5.
And I'm telling you, if it wasn't for Jared Goff, they would have been ahead of the Niners for me. It's just for me, I just don't trust
I
Jared
get it.
Goff. And that's outside of that, it's like, hey, I
Totally
respect Brock Purdy more. And it's not saying you don't respect Brock Purdy, but I'm just saying for me, out of those two. But who's your number 3?
Listen. Here's the deal. I am not a big Jared Goff guy either, but Jared Goff, for whatever reason, they were still able to make it to the NFC Championship last year with Jared Goff. He has played in a Super Bowl. He has made some Pro Bowls. Again, I don't think he's near as good as what the pure numbers say. You get him off his spot, it can be a major problem, but that's why the Bills and why he works so well with the Bills. They've just got a stone wall right in front of him. It's almost impossible to get him off his spot on a consistent basis. Now, you see a random time where the Ravens were able to do it for a big majority of the game last year, and it was a disaster. But 99% of the teams in the league don't have the firepower to send it that elite offensive line to get him off of his spot. And so it makes it really, really hard. By the way, they got Christian Mahogany as well, who might be a plug and play guy. Like that offensive line that was already great, bro. They went and drafted another guy that would start on a lot of teams in the league, and he might be the first guy off the bench. So point is, it's great. But we also know, for as much as we don't like Jared Goff, and I agree with you, if you don't get him off his spot and he can camp, he can tear you apart. And that's what makes it hard, is like, man, you really gotta get to him. And that means you got to get through that offensive line to get to him. And I don't trust very many teams to do that. I just don't.
And there's a likelihood that what's the receiver opposite of Jameson Williams takes a step up because he's recovered from the ACL. So there's a good chance that we do see an explosive offense with Amon-Ra on one side, Jameson Williams on the other. So very interesting. I'm kind of glad you gave them the respect that they deserve, to be honest.
Well, remember this, though, too. The 49ers last year, when they played them in the NFC Championship, Jonah Jackson didn't play in that game at all. So they lost Jonah Jackson, but they replaced him with another Pro Bowl guard. So that was without one of their really good offensive linemen. The 49ers still couldn't consistently get to him. And on top of that, their all-world tight end was a shell of himself, man. He had a knee brace on. He really shouldn't have been playing, but he was toughing through it. So that's 2 big-time players that were really hampered or didn't even play last year. Now, again, that could easily happen again this year. We don't know what injuries are going to look like, but that team that I thought was already undermanned against the 49ers from a talent aspect had 2 of their better players either compromised or out of that game, which should have made that talent gap even more astronomical. Yet somehow, man, they were able to hang in that game. So now I look at them and say, listen, player for player, they're there now. They're there. So if they were able to hang when they weren't there player for player, what would happen if they were? And that's what I can't erase that out of my mind until I see them play. Now, they do play this year. They play at Levi. I think it's possible the